How would you react if you encountered sexual harassment? What would you do? I'm sure most of us would respond, I would stop the harasser or I would scream for help. What if I asked, how would you feel towards the harasser? Again, pretty sure most of us would say, I will be angry, furious even. You're not alone. Most people predict their response to sexual harassment will be confrontational. However, research shows that is rarely the case. We might predict we will confront our abuser, but most of us actually freeze in such a situation. Why is it so? Let's find out. The Me Too movement brought together many people who shared their stories with the world. It was an important milestone because it helped shed a light on behaviors and cultures that were previously shrugged off as boys will be boys. It was a landmark movement because where most survivors of sexual harassment rarely come forward to file a report or share such an incident with even close family or friends, this movement helped many survivors come forward with their experience. The more people started reporting and understanding what sexual harassment is, the more we begin to understand the deep roots this social evil has in our society and its prevalence across settings at home, office, friend circles, across ages, genders, as well as socioeconomic statuses. However, a large number of sexual harassment incidents still go unreported. Why don't people still take action against their abusers? Coming forward or confronting might be more complicated and challenging than one might imagine. Survivors are often questioned for not coming forward sooner or putting an end to the abuser's behavior by reporting it. Many survivors have, in fact, chosen to quit their jobs, leave relationships, or move cities, all non confrontational decisions, over facing their abuser. Even if we predict we would be confrontational, most of us do not actually act in the same manner. We might find some answers in cognitive and behavioral sciences. How we predict we might react to a situation and how we actually react to situations are influenced by various factors. These factors can be clubbed into two categories based on different psychological theories. First category is that of affective forecasting error. This theory can help us explain what type of predictions we might make and why we are terrible at making those predictions. The second theory helps us explain how we make sense of situations when we actually face them and how the sense making process affects the way we would ultimately behave. Let us first look at the affective forecasting error. The affective forecasting error refers to the cognitive bias that leads us to make incorrect predictions when trying to forecast how we might feel and act in an imaginary situation. For example, if I ask you, how would you feel if you just got to know you won a huge amount in lottery? Most of us would say we would feel excited or happy or probably want to go buy ourselves something nice. However, most of us would not account for the disappointment we might feel after realizing how much tax would be deducted, or the confusion we might feel when trying to decide how to invest all the money. Thus, incorrectly forecasting our feelings and behaviors about an imaginary situation. As studies show, we are actually terrible at making predictions. Researchers Woodzika and LaFrance tried to demonstrate the same by asking a group of 200 women how they would react if they were asked sexually harassing questions during a job interview. Almost all women responded they would be angry and ask the interviewer to stop or leave the interview. After a few days, researchers set up an actual interview for about 65 women to analyze how they would react in a real setting. Women were unaware that the interview was set up by the researchers, and the interviewers were instructed to ask harassing questions during it. The results of the study were shocking. In contradiction to their prediction, women responded with fear and lack of confrontation instead of anger and confrontation. None of the women acted the way they had reported they would act when asked to imagine a similar situation. Almost all women incorrectly predicted their affective states. Why does this happen? Affective forecasting errors might take place due to many reasons. In cases of sexual harassment, we can focus on three particular factors that lead us to make incorrect predictions: the misconstrual effect, isolation effect, and focalism. Let us first take a look at the misconstrual effect. This theory suggests that when we try to predict our emotions based on an imagined situation, we tend to construct the situation itself incorrectly. For example, in the job interview experiment, when women were asked to imagine any setting of sexual harassment and report how they would feel or act, the situations imagined by women were one where they would feel absolutely no fear. However, as we saw in the results, the real experience was not the same. When constructing the imaginary situation, these women did not take into consideration factors that might cause them to feel fear, such as if they really needed the job, they might be fearful of losing the opportunity to get it, or they might feel fearful of their physical safety if they try to confront the interviewer. If made aware of such details, one might make predictions about their feelings differently. Researchers have noted that we expect women to confront their harassers and often criticize them when they fail to do so, precisely due to this misconstrual effect. People almost always mistakenly imagine a situation where it is easier to confront the harasser than it would be in real life. A real life situation is far more complex and one where people are likely to experience not just anger, but fear, intimidation, or confusion. The second bias that leads to forecasting errors is the isolation effect. Let us do a quick activity to understand this effect. You may pause the video now to quickly grab a pen and a piece of paper. Okay, now let's try and compare two situations. First situation, imagine you're with a group of close friends and they are pulling your leg and having fun. Second situation, imagine you are with a group of people you don't know that well, who are also pulling your leg and making fun of you. Think of some points comparing how you would feel in these two situations. You may pause the video if you would want to take some more time. What kind of things did you write about? Most people make note of things such as the first situation wouldn't make me as uncomfortable as they're a close group of friends and I trust they are only pulling my leg. Whereas I might feel uncomfortable in the second situation as I'm not very close to these people and I don't know what their intentions are. And you may be right. However, without having any specific details on what it is the friends were making fun of or what kind of jokes were the strangers cracking, it is extremely difficult to predict how we might react. We assumed that the two situations would be very different from each other, like black and white, and we tend to overlook the similarities two situations might have. If you made comparisons based on similarities, congratulations. You are able to imagine nuances of a situation better than most people. This is exactly what the isolation effect is. It suggests that when comparing alternative events, people tend to focus on how two situations might be different from each other than how they might be similar. In this example, maybe the jokes cracked by both the friends group as well as the strangers are so rude that they make you feel hurt or threatened. Alternatively, jokes cracked by both groups might seem so harmless that you wouldn't want to react in either of the situations. The isolation effect might lead us to believe that all situations of sexual harassment will seem very different than any other situation, such as casual leg pulling or flirting, etc. However, more often than not, this is not the case. How many times have you felt uncomfortable in a situation? However, were not very sure if it was sexual harassment or not. Maybe because the situation did not have some trademark behaviors that you might associate with harassment. For example, if somebody believes sexual harassment is aggressive, feels rude, and is violent in nature, they are less likely to notice behaviors that are harassing but might not be as aggressive as they expected, such as ambient harassment, which is generally very subtle and difficult to put a finger on. The more rigid our idea about what harassment looks like, the less likely we are able to take notice of any other behavior that doesn't fit our criteria. Hence, it is important to pay attention to the feeling of discomfort rather than looking for trademark behaviors. Finally, the third factor that leads to effective forecasting error is known as focalism. Focalism suggests that we focus on one main feeling and tend to overlook all the seemingly unrelated factors that would influence our feelings and actions in a particular situation. For example, if an individual is going through a breakup and is in a very low mood, they are likely to be more intensely affected by sexual harassment than if they weren't experiencing negative emotions due to an unrelated situation. Hence, when making predictions, it is nearly impossible to be aware of all the unrelated events that might influence our behavior. This again would lead to a gap in how we imagined we would react and how we actually end up reacting. Let us now move on to the second category of factors that create a gap in intention and action, the sense making process. The sense making process tries to reduce the intensity of a traumatic situation so that it is easier for an individual to cope with it. This is done in two ways. First is known as immune neglect, and the second is known as organization neglect. When faced with a possible traumatic situation, people try to find ways to reduce the impact. We might say things like, I had a feeling this was going to happen, or it could have been a lot worse. This is immune neglect. Thinking of a situation in such a manner reduces its impact by removing the unexpected nature of it, because unexpected or sudden incidents cause more distress than expected incidents. Organization neglect is another way of reducing impact of a traumatic event. In this sense-making process, people tend to make a negative event seem ordinary so that the intensity of the situation is reduced. For example, when we say things such as, it is okay, so many people go through the same experience, or it is fine, people have even worse experiences than this. Both these sense-making processes are a result of the hindsight bias, which means individuals try to rob the traumatic event of its emotional intensity by making sense of it in retrospect. Unexpected and perceived out of control events cause more emotional upheaval than expected and in control events. This sense making leads individuals to react in a passive manner as their brain tells them the situation wasn't that important to have any reaction to in the first place. Understanding the reality of experiencing sexual harassment is crucial in building a society that can put an end to such cultures. In subsequent videos, we will look further into why most survivors passively cope with harassing situations. What is the role of an observer? And how can we build programs that are actually effective and protect the vulnerable population?